The air inside the small apartment was thick with anxiety. The more I read on through the files, the more the truth became clearer. We were part of something far bigger than just a memory manipulation experiment. The deeper I dug into my own past, the more I felt like a stranger to myself. Every document, every paper felt like another layer of my own identity being peeled away, revealing a person I no longer recognized. Ethan was pacing back and forth, his hands gripping his head as if he could physically stop the flood of memories threatening to break loose. We hadn't spoken much in the last hour. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been said. We were caught in a web we couldn't escape, and the walls were closing in faster than I could process the truth.
I can't keep doing this,
Ethan finally said, his voice strained with frustration.
I can't keep pretending like I'm the only one with the answers.
You're not the only one, I said quietly, looking up from the file in front of me. I don't have the answers either, but we need to keep going. We need to understand what happened, what's been happening to us. Ethan stopped pacing and turned to face me, his eyes wild with a mixture of anger and desperation.
What's been happening to us?
He laughed bitterly.
I think I already know what's been happening to us, Evelyn. We've been used. And I think I'm starting to remember who's been doing it.
My heart skipped a beat at his words. I hadn't told him everything. I hadn't told him how my own memories were slipping away, how fragments of my life were fading into nothingness. But Ethan's words rang true. We weren't just being used. We were being controlled. Who? I whispered, though I already feared I knew the answer.
The man with the gray eyes,
he said flatly.
He's not just some shadow in our memories. He's the one pulling the strings. He's the one who's been behind this all along.
I shook my head, trying to clear the fog in my mind. But who is he? What does he want with us?
I think we're about to find out,
Ethan said, his voice low, almost a growl.
I don't think it's just us, Evelyn. I think we've been part of something much bigger, something far more dangerous than we ever imagined.
I could feel a tight knot forming in my stomach. There had to be more to the story than we knew. There had to be something we were missing, something we weren't seeing. But no matter how hard I tried, the answers seemed to slip further and further out of reach. It had been days since we found the file with Dr. Holt's name on it, the letter, the project. Everything was connected, but the connection didn't make sense. Who were these people, and why had they chosen us? Ethan had been quiet ever since, not in the usual way, but almost withdrawn. I knew he was thinking about things I couldn't understand. And as the silence dragged on, I began to worry that whatever memories had been returned to him were too much for him to handle. The longer I spent with Ethan, the more I realized that his mind was a labyrinth, a maze that even he couldn't navigate. His memories had been shattered, fragmented, and now I was beginning to see that mine were just as broken. I couldn't escape this. I couldn't hide from the truth, but I wasn't ready to confront it. I wasn't sure if I'd ever be ready. What's the next step? I finally asked, breaking the silence. Ethan looked at me, his eyes narrowed with resolve.
The next step is figuring out who's behind all this. We know it's Dr. Holt. He's the one who started the project, but who else is involved?
I felt the cold grip of fear tighten in my chest. Dr. Holt. The name felt like a key, but it wasn't unlocking the door. The more we dug, the more we found. But the answers only led to more questions.
We've been looking at everything from the outside.
Ethan continued, pacing again, his words growing faster, more frantic.
We've been trying to piece together who's been controlling us, but maybe that's not the question we should be asking.
Then what should we be asking? I asked, my voice quiet.
Who else has been controlled?
He asked, his voice low.
Who else has been manipulated like we have? Who else is part of this experiment?
The answer hung in the air between us, unspoken but undeniable. The truth was that we weren't the only ones. There were others. People who had been part of this project, this experiment, and who had likely been erased just like we had. But where were they now? I had been so focused on the idea of fixing Ethan, of helping him find his memories, that I hadn't considered that he wasn't the only one suffering. There were other victims, other people whose minds had been shattered and erased. And what if they had the answers we needed? What if they knew something that could help us stop Dr. Holt and the grey-eyed man? We have to find them, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. We need to find the other people involved, the other subjects. Ethan nodded slowly. I think that's our only shot. If we can find them, we can figure out what happened to us. We can stop Dr. Holt, stop the grey-eyed man. But even as I said it, I knew it wouldn't be easy. We didn't know where to look, or even who to trust. Every step forward seemed to take us deeper into the unknown, deeper into the abyss. We spent the next few days searching for clues, following every lead we could find, but it was like chasing shadows. The more we uncovered, the less we understood. I began to feel like we were on the verge of something huge, something life-altering, but every time we got close, it slipped away. Then, one evening, as I was going through another stack of papers, something caught my eye. It was a name I recognized from the files we had found earlier. Samuel Holt. I stared at the name for a long time, my heart racing. Dr. Holt, the man who had started everything. But this time, it was different. The paper I was holding wasn't about the project, it was about him. It was a file I hadn't seen before, a personal record. I opened the file and began reading. The document contained detailed notes about Dr. Holt's history, his background in neuropsychology, and his rise to prominence in the scientific community. But there was something else, something chilling. There were mentions of subjects and experiments that went beyond memory manipulation. The language was clinical, detached, but the implications were terrifying. The more I read, the more I realized that Dr. Holt wasn't just a scientist. He was a mastermind. He had orchestrated this entire experiment, manipulating people like pawns in a game, erasing their memories, shaping their identities, controlling their lives. And the grey-eyed man, he was the enforcer. The file mentioned a test subject who had become integral to Holt's work. A person who had been chosen for a final experiment. And as I read further, I realized something that made my blood run cold. I was that subject. The realization hit me like a freight train. I wasn't just a participant in Holt's experiment. I was the central figure. And the grey-eyed man? He was the one who had been controlling me all along. But what had I become? What was I now?